Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. In this episode, we are going to be talking about Kala, a film by Rohith V starring Tovino Thomas and Sumesh. The film is set in the late 1990s, but it is actually very timeless. It's almost as timeless as nature, which is a big part of this film's texture. We get overhead shots of rugged terrain, we get shots of sunlight through leaves. When we see a man's face, it is framed through leaves. Bodies are reflected in water. Rain is a major presence. When a man searches for his missing dog, we see a dragonfly. When two men fight, like really fight, instead of focusing on them, we are focusing, that is what's in the foreground, are two butterflies. In short, we are talking about a very carefully designed film, a film filled with echoes and mirror images. Early on, we see a kid with a toy gun taking aim at a plane in the sky. And later on, much later on, we see from a plane almost two men fighting on the ground, and they resemble kids. We see cobwebs on a window, and later when we see a man's spectacles that are cracked, the design seems almost like one of those cobwebs that we just saw. So this is a story about two men, right? The characters played by Tovino Thomas and Sumesh. So everything happens in twos. Later we see two men with bandaged legs, though not necessarily these two men that I talked about earlier. We see two sets of water being used to cleanse things. One, a woman taking a bath that is intercut with a sickle being washed in the water outside the house. We see two instances of people eating. One, the set of people inside the house at the breakfast table, and two, the set of workers that these people inside have employed outside the house. There are two instances of scenes involving missing roof tiles. There are two instances of men with black dogs, and there are two instances of men who are reduced to animals. The first time we see the Tovino Thomas character, he is shaking his head like a dog. He's like bathing his dog, but his head is seen in slow motion. He has a big beard, he has big hair, big unkempt hair. It's almost animal-like. And when he's shaking his head like that, it almost looks like a dog that's shaking itself, shaking the water off itself after a bath. As for Sumesh, the other character, he's very often made to look like a beast. And the point is that the Sumesh character was not always this way, that he became this way along the way. And so we get to the film's opening quote by Oscar Wilde. This is the quote: "Selfishness is not living as one wishes to live, it is asking others to live as one wishes to live." In other words, unselfishness is basically letting other people just be, not interfering in their lives. And because Tovino Thomas' character is not that way, that's when the whole thing erupts. The characters of the two men are defined by the dogs that they own. The Tovino Thomas character, he owns his big, expensive foreign breed, and he actually treats it like one would treat a Rolls Royce. He keeps it locked in a cage. Whereas the other character, Sumesh, he has a mongrel, a black mongrel that he treats like a brother, like a member of his own family. So we're in a story about the privileged versus the oppressed, and you know which one of them smokes a cigarette and which one of them smokes a BD. But when the cigarette smoker picks up a BD, you know that he is not that different after all. In fact, one of the nicest touches in the movies is that the privileged man turns out to be oppressed in his own way by his father, who has been demeaning him all his life. So this is the interesting thing about Kala. All this happens, but we have to wait a good 45 minutes for the story to actually get going. And what happens in those 45 minutes? We see the semblance of a normal life. We see Tovino Thomas, we see his wife, we see his cute kid, we see his dad, we see workers coming to work on his plantation. In short, everything seems very normal. And some viewers may think, why are we spending so much time on the so-called civilized details of this man's life? Because this is how we define civilization, right? A home, wife, kids, very normal kind of life within certain boundaries. But here's when the real point emerges after 45 minutes, when the civilized layers are slowly peeled away, and we discover that under the civilized nature, man is actually an animal after all. Our primal emotions are just under the surface of our skin. It probably just takes a small cut for them to erupt out into the world like lava from a volcano. And from that moment on, Kala is one spectacular action scene after another, with these two men engaged in a battle for survival where they have to unleash their inner animals. There is a lot packed into Kala. Now let's take the wife character played by Divya Pillai. Now at the beginning itself, even when the so-called civilized portions of the films are happening, she says that she needs to leave the house for a while because her mindset is not alright. She wants to visit her parents and kind of get back some sense of normalcy. And we slowly see what is missing in this house is that sense of normalcy even within that civilized exterior. For example, even the casual exchanges between Lal, the father, and Tovino Thomas, the son, they are packed with so much of underhanded insults and demeaning things. For example, the scenes between Lal, who plays the father, and the Tovino Thomas character, they show how toxic characteristics are passed down from one generation to another. Later, when Tovino is playing with his son, he says, "Boys don't cry." That's the lesson that he's trying to teach his little kid. Kala is also about failures and how failing constantly and being reminded about this failure constantly by others can change us as a person. Kala is also about how privileged people have driven others out of their lands and usurped their lands, and now they call themselves the owners, whereas the others owned those lands earlier. I'll give you one scene to show how complicated and interesting Kala is. There is a scene where Tovino Thomas has to ask the daily wagers that he's employed, the people that he may have pushed or his generations earlier may have pushed out of their own homes. He's employed these people to load sacks of pepper and take them somewhere. Now, one of them gets hurt really badly and has to be taken to a hospital. Tovino says, "Can't you load these sacks of pepper first and then take him to a hospital?" Normally, we'd see him as just this cruel, insensitive man. But what if this is also the reaction of a man who has failed so much in life that he cannot afford to think of failing again? That his reaction is just that, "Oh my God, at least this time I need to succeed." So here's another scene. When Tovino Thomas and Sumesh fight each other, their blood falls on each other, right? Divya Pillai comes home and she smells Tovino and says, "This blood doesn't smell like your blood, it smells different." And you're wondering, how can blood smell different? Is that really what privilege is? That they can even smell out the so-called upper class blood from the lower class blood? Kala is beautifully made. The sound design is by Vincent. This is a very stylized movie and the sound design complements this stylization beautifully. The action choreography is another major highlight, as is Akhil George's cinematography, which has a gala time alternating between stillness and action. Now, some of the issues that I had with the movie, they didn't kill the movie for me, but I had an issue with the way the nature aspect was hammered home a little too much, I felt. I felt I could have lived with a little less of that lesson being constantly thrust at me that we live with all these other creatures all the time. Also, the closing portions are almost too stylized, like a music video. I preferred the rawness of the earlier action sequences where it was literally like seeing two animals fight together in the forest. But all that apart, Kala is a superb combination of a home invasion thriller come survival movie come drama about class and caste. If you like this video, do subscribe to Film Companion South and see you soon at the movies.